From the moment Nathaniel Vance was born, it seemed the world had been waiting for him. Born into an old money dynasty, Nathaniel grew up in a grand estate surrounded by rolling fields, crystal lakes, and the kind of silence that only true wealth could afford. And from almost as early as he could walk, there was one constant figure by his side, Clara Whitmore. Clara, the daughter of the estate's groundskeeper, was not born into privilege. But Nathaniel's parents, kind and forward-thinking for their time, allowed the children to grow together. They played under the towering oaks, chased fireflies in the twilight, and as the years passed, shared stolen glances that hinted at a bond deeper than mere friendship. Nathaniel loved Clara in a way words could barely contain. Her laughter was a song he never tired of hearing. Her spirit, wild and untamed, made his carefully planned life feel spontaneous and real. By the time they were 18, it was understood, though never formally spoken, that one day they would marry. Life, however, is rarely so simple. Nathaniel's burgeoning empire demanded his attention, pulling him into the heart of business deals, galas, and social circles where appearances mattered more than intentions. And it was at one such lavish gathering that he met her, Selina Dubois. Selina was a woman who defied simple descriptions. She was captivating, with dark, swirling eyes that seemed to pull secrets from your soul, and a voice like velvet laced with smoke. She was not of Nathaniel's world, but she moved through it as if she owned it. Rumors whispered that she had come from a line of healers in New Orleans, women with knowledge of ancient rites and spells, women who could bless or curse with equal ease. Nathaniel, ever polite, treated Selina with kindness. But Selina mistook politeness for something deeper. In her mind, Nathaniel was destined to be hers, bound by fate and desire, two forces she believed could be bent with enough will, and perhaps a little magic. When news of Nathaniel and Clara's engagement reached Selina, something inside her fractured. She retreated from public view for weeks, and when she returned, her smile was sharper, her eyes colder. She began to weave her plan. One misty evening, a week before the wedding, Clara was returning from her final dress fitting. The country road was narrow, the night thick with fog. Out of nowhere, a figure stepped into the road, Selina. Clara slammed on the brakes, but the car skidded, crashing into a ditch. The impact was brutal. When Clara woke up in the hospital, the doctors spoke in hushed, broken sentences. Her spinal cord was damaged. She would never walk again. The days that followed were a blur of sorrow and disbelief. Clara, once so full of life, now sat silently in her wheelchair, staring out the hospital window. Nathaniel visited every day, but she refused to look at him. In her mind, she was broken, less than what he deserved. She tried to push him away, telling him cruel things, begging him to find someone whole. But Nathaniel was not a man easily moved by fear or sadness. His love for Clara had never been about perfection. And then, late one night, a nurse found something strange in Clara's room. Beneath her bed was a small charm, a twisted figure made of bone and string, smeared with what looked like ash. Pinned to it was a scrap of parchment with a single word written in a jagged hand: yield. Nathaniel recognized the work for what it was, a curse. He confronted Selina in broad daylight, in front of dozens of witnesses. She laughed, a cold, brittle sound, and spoke words that froze the blood of everyone within earshot. You could have been mine, Nathaniel, but you chose her. So she will spend her life watching you from the shadows, never able to dance, to run to you, to live fully. And you will watch her suffer until your heart rots in your chest. Selina was escorted away by security. There was talk of charges, of investigations, but somehow nothing stuck. The charm had disappeared. The witnesses faded into uncertainty. Selina vanished like a shadow at dawn. But the damage had been done. The wedding was postponed indefinitely. Clara insisted it was best for Nathaniel to leave her behind. She pleaded, wept, screamed at him to find someone who could give him a future not shackled by her chair. Nathaniel listened. He let her scream. He let her cry. And when she was finished, hollow and exhausted, he knelt before her. I am not marrying your legs, Clara, he said softly. I am marrying your heart. Tears streamed down Clara's face, mixing with her heartbreak and hope. For the first time since the accident, she allowed herself to dream. The date was set anew, the invitation sent once again. But the world, it seemed, was not done testing them yet. The day of the wedding arrived cloaked in an uneasy stillness. The sun struggled behind thick, heavy clouds, casting the estate in a muted silver light. Guests whispered nervously among themselves, aware of the dark rumors surrounding Clara's accident, but too polite, or too fearful, to speak them aloud. Inside her room, Clara sat before a gilded mirror, her reflection almost unrecognizable. Not because of her wheelchair, nor even the elegant white gown that flowed around her like a pool of silk, but because of the light, fragile but fierce, that had returned to her eyes. Nathaniel had kept his word. He loved her still. No curse, no tragedy, no whispered threat could shake the foundation of what they shared. Her maid of honor, a cousin who had always been more friend than family, adjusted Clara's veil with trembling fingers. "It's not too late," she whispered. "If you're scared," Clara smiled, a bittersweet curve of her lips. "I am scared," she admitted. "But love is about stepping forward even when you're terrified." Meanwhile, Nathaniel waited in the garden where the ceremony would take place. The aisle was lined with white lilies, Clara's favorite, and ivy climbed the trellises like living lace. His hands, steady during billion-dollar negotiations, now trembled slightly at his sides. He wasn't afraid of commitment. He was afraid of what lingered unseen in the air, the curse that still pulsed at the edges of their lives. As the music began and Clara appeared at the end of the aisle, a collective gasp rose from the crowd. She moved forward slowly, her wheelchair guided by her cousin, her veil catching the muted light like spun sugar. Nathaniel's heart swelled so painfully it was almost unbearable. But just as Clara reached the halfway point, the first raindrop fell. It wasn't gentle. The sky cracked open with a roar, and a cold, punishing rain drenched the guests in seconds. Gasps turned to shrieks as the carefully laid garden flooded with water and mud. Nathaniel ran to Clara's side, shielding her with his own body. Behind him, the officiant tried to salvage the ceremony, calling for everyone to move inside. But then something more terrible happened. From the tree line at the far end of the property, a figure appeared. Selina. Her dress clung to her like a second skin, her hair plastered to her skull. Yet she moved with eerie calm, her eyes locked onto Clara. And then, without raising her voice, she spoke a single word. "Fall." Clara's wheelchair trembled violently, as if some invisible force had seized it. The guests screamed, scattering for shelter. Nathaniel lunged, grabbing the chair's handles, fighting the unseen force with every ounce of his strength. For a terrible moment, it seemed like he would lose. Clara's wheels spun helplessly, mud splattering her pristine dress. Then suddenly there was a flash of brilliant white light. Everyone turned to see the elderly groundskeeper, Clara's father, standing by the altar, holding aloft a silver crucifix that glowed against the storm. His voice, strong despite his years, rang out. "You have no power here, Selina Du Bois. Leave this place, or face the judgment you have called upon yourself." Selina staggered backward, her mouth twisting into an ugly snarl. With a final scream that barely sounded human, she turned and fled into the woods, vanishing like mist. The rain stopped almost instantly. The guests stood frozen in shock. Nathaniel slowly turned Clara's chair to face the altar. They were soaked, covered in mud, the flowers destroyed, the setting a ruin. And yet, when Nathaniel looked at Clara, she was laughing, truly laughing, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. In that moment, amidst the wreckage, they chose love once again. The officiant, soaked and shivering, approached. "Shall we proceed?" he asked with a shaky smile. Nathaniel and Clara looked at each other. Both nodded. And so, standing in the wrecked garden, surrounded by fallen flowers and mud, Nathaniel Vance and Clara Whitmore exchanged vows not written by poets or lawyers, but carved from the raw material of real life. When the officiant finally declared, "You may now kiss the bride," Nathaniel knelt beside her wheelchair and kissed her with a tenderness that made the whole world fall away. The guests, those who remained, erupted into cheers and applause, a sound louder and purer than any cathedral organ. For a moment it seemed the curse was broken. But deep within the woods, unseen by all, a pair of furious eyes watched and planned. Weeks passed since the wedding that defied storms, curses, and fear. The world buzzed with curiosity. Whispers of what had happened at the estate spread through tabloids and social media, half-truths wrapped in fantasy. But inside the mansion, Nathaniel and Clara lived in quiet defiance of all of it. Despite the shadows that still lingered, there was peace. Until one night that peace was shattered. Nathaniel had just returned from a late charity gala. Clara, now more radiant than ever, was in the library, her hands gliding across a Braille edition of her favorite book, something she had taken up to exercise a new sense of strength within her. Then, a crash. Glass. Wind. The air thickened like smoke. Selina was back. She did not knock. She did not sneak. She walked through the front doors as if the estate were hers. Clara heard the cane first, the soft click-click of Selina's infamous ivory walking stick, the same one she had used years ago as she charmed society circles, before the world knew what she truly was. "You thought marrying him would save you?" Selina's voice dripped with venom. "That his name, his money, his love could protect you from what I've sown into your blood?" Clara faced her, still seated in her chair, spine straight. "No," she said quietly. "I didn't think love would protect me. I knew it would transform me." Selina laughed. "He won't always be around. Sooner or later the weakness in you will rot everything, and when it does, I will still be here." A blast of cold wind rattled the windows, but then another voice echoed from the hallway, low, firm, and calm. "You already made one mistake by hurting the woman I love. Making a second would be your end." Nathaniel appeared in the doorway, but he wasn't alone. With him stood a woman in her 60s, cloaked in gray, her presence calm and commanding. She held no wand, no talisman, just an old leather-bound book. "Who is that?" Selina hissed. Nathaniel stepped forward. "This is Mother Agnes. She knew your grandmother. She knows what you are, and more importantly, she knows how to undo it." Selina faltered for the first time. "No one can undo me." But Mother Agnes spoke gently. "Not undo you, child. Free you." The room shimmered. The mansion's walls trembled as old magic, deep ancestral magic, filled the air. "Selina," Agnes said, "you've twisted your pain into vengeance, but you weren't born a monster. Something made you believe love had to be punished." Selina's eyes flickered. There was something in her buried deep that trembled. Clara saw it too. And in that moment, from her chair, she did the unthinkable. She reached out. "Let go," Clara said softly. "Whatever turned you bitter, you don't have to carry it anymore. This can end without more pain." For the first time, Selina hesitated. But pain, especially when worn for years, is not easy to shed. "I have nothing left but the curse," she whispered. Nathaniel moved to Clara's side. "Then let us take it from you." Mother Agnes opened the book, her voice rising in a rhythmic chant. Selina screamed, not in pain but in release. The storm that raged around her internally magically cracked and shattered like a mirror. Her eyes widened and tears rolled down her cheeks, not from rage but from something ancient and tragic. Grief. Then, as the light from Agnes's book faded, Selina collapsed. Not dead, just silent. Broken. Free. 1 year later. The estate bloomed with new life. Gardens replanted. Windows clear. Laughter returning to halls once thick with ghosts. Clara rolled out onto the terrace, the sun kissing her skin. But today she stood. Yes, stood. Her legs were still weak, the progress slow. But with therapy, perseverance, and unshakable love, she had begun walking short distances again. Nathaniel joined her, wrapping an arm around her waist. Selina now lived in a private rehabilitation center far from the city. She wrote letters to Clara every month. Long, vulnerable letters filled with apologies and memories, like shedding layers of a soul long buried. Mother Agnes visited often. She said something rare had happened that night. Not just a breaking of a curse, but a healing of old wounds in the spiritual fabric of their bloodlines. Clara had published a memoir, Love in the Shadow of Curses, which became a bestseller. She didn't write it for fame. She wrote it to remind people that love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing someone again and again, even when storms come, even when curses try to win. And that sometimes the deepest kind of power is compassion. They thought a curse would break them. That fear would win. But love, raw, unwavering, imperfect love, stood taller than any storm. And in the end, even the darkest magic couldn't compete with two people who refused to stop believing in each other. If you were moved by this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful, true, and inspired stories. Because sometimes, the most magical tales are the ones born in the real world.